Welcome to the Peak Revival podcast. My name is Vesna, and today we're going to talk about how to deal with stress without feeling overwhelmed. Now, a big part of exhaustion, anxiety, stress, burnout, things that are barriers to high performance has to do with overthinking. So overthinking leads to overwhelm. It's not how much we have on during the day. So you will think of days when you've had a lot on and you get through it and it feels pretty easy, and then other days you have a lot on and you just feel completely overwhelmed. So having too much on our mind, overthinking, leads to anxiety, it leads to overwhelm, stress, low moods, and burnout. So it's a really big trigger for burnouts, this long-term overthinking where the mind is so overloaded with mental stress for too long. This mental stress or hypervigilant thinking activates or triggers the stress response. It activates the fight or flight response and releases stress hormones in the body. So if you look at how mental stress actually has a downstream effect on our hormones, on our systems, on our energy, on our mood, on our performance, on our sleep, on so many factors, on our weight even, then you will really see that this part, if we can get a handle on this part, it will make a huge difference to the way that we look and the way that we feel. So when I'm talking about overthinking, I'm talking about more the negative stuff, the thing that's creating tension and worry and concern. If we overanalyze the situation, if we catastrophize the situation, that kind of thinking creates a lot of stress on the system. Now, research has found that up to 3 minutes of negative thinking starts to change the biochemistry in our brain. It releases stress hormone, it floods the body with glucose, which then floods the body with insulin, and it also activates silent genes, and it moves us out of the rest and relaxation response. So that's just 3 minutes of negative thinking. So like I said, like worry, concern, things like that. But they've also found that, the opposite is true. So positive, calming, happy thoughts will also induce healing hormones and reverse the damage of negative thinking. So it's important to see this, that it highlights the fact that yes, our negative thinking is making an impact to our physiology on a biochemical level, and having a more clear mind, having clarity and more happy and I guess kind of content and peaceful thinking is going to help us be at our best. When we're stressed, our body is flooded with the stress hormone cortisol, which literally drops our IQ, and it gives us tunnel vision. So we zone in on a problem, we become hypervigilant, we can't let it go, and we don't allow for a bigger perspective. So it's very difficult to resolve our issues or find solutions to our challenges when we have such tunnel vision. It's almost like reading a book with your nose pressed up against the page. You can only see a few words rather than the whole story. And this is the same thing which happens in our mind. We get very myopic with our thinking. Our judgment is impaired. It is not the best time to make a decision because we are irrational when we have too much cortisol being released. So how do we deal with our stress and challenges and situations that happen in our life? Because life is never without challenges. How do we deal with that without feeling so overwhelmed and stressed and drained by everything that's happening? And how can we do things with a lot more ease and navigate our life more easily without that dread and that worry? And the first thing that I like to take my clients through is really understanding how the mind works. I have found that strategies alone are not really life-changing for my clients anyway, until they really see how the mind works, like what's really happening in the mind, in the body, that's creating their symptoms and the way that they feel and the way that they see the world as well, and making everything worse. So number one, thinking creates overwhelm, it creates anxiety, and it creates stress, and it's not about the situation. So when we have too much on our mind is like overloaded. And it's almost like if you were to jump in your car and drive down the road and put your foot on the accelerator and drive it into the red zone for the next, 3 hours, right? Your engine will get close to engine failure because the car is not designed to drive in that red zone for long periods of time, right? This is the same with the mind. And what we don't understand is that when we have lots of thinking in our mind and it creates all of these uneasy feelings, those symptoms the anxiety, the tension, the worry, the fear, all of those feelings, the just horrible, yucky feelings that we feel, is actually your body letting you know that your mind is in overdrive, that there is too much on your mind, there is too much thinking, and it's the best way that the body can get your attention to say, hey, you got to slow it down. So those symptoms are not coming from our to-do list or the situation at hand. What it's coming from is our body telling us, hey, you're in the red zone. Okay. And while we use a lot of this over analytical thinking and worry and concern, because we really feel like it helps us to offset or mitigate any further stress down the road, what it really does, it revs up our system and it prevents clarity, and we really are not in the best place to make a decision or to resolve issues. Over time, when we have so much overthinking, like if it becomes chronic, eventually it becomes habitual. We are accustomed to operating in this place where we've always got a lot on our mind, we're always worried about every scenario. It starts to change our biochemistry in our brain, and so we get a fluctuation in our neurotransmitters, which means we are more prone to anxiety and stress and overwhelm because we don't have those nutrients or those neurotransmitters to keep the brain and the body balanced and calm and rational and feeling like everything's going to be okay. So number one was really recognizing that your overthinking is creating the symptoms that you're feeling that you really want to escape from. It's making the scenario feel more serious and more dread and more concern and more, catastrophized, when really it's a symptom that your body's giving you to say, hey, you're in the red zone, you need to slow down, okay? You need to pull back from your thinking as best that you can. Get out of your head, and from a clear state of mind, you'll be able to resolve what's in front of you. The second step is to escape the thought traps. You will have common triggers that you get stuck in, that you catastrophize, that kind of sets you off. And for everybody, it's different, but there will be certain things that you find that are harder for you to let go. Now, a clear mind finds solutions. We don't do very well with adding more on our mind, with adding more to our plate in terms of mental stress. So I once had a client who was very successful in her career. This is just to give you an example. She had a business, she was very successful. She had been in business for about 20, 30 years. So she really knew how to do business. We were chatting one day and she was really worried, she was really concerned and catastrophizing because her business was going through a cash flow issue, and she thought, oh, what about if I can't pay my staff? And so in her mind, she had really blown this up. And I asked her, I said, have you ever been in business before where you had this issue where you couldn't pay staff? And how did you overcome it? She was like, yeah, actually I did right in the beginning. And I actually had to get money out of an ATM to pay my staff. It was so much worse, right? And then she relaxed because she could see that she had been in this situation before, and she knew she was able to get out of it before. She'll find a way to get out of it now. And so the biggest thing that keeps us stuck in these thought traps is that we don't see the solution. And so I always say to my clients, have you been in this scenario before? And how many times have you overcome this scenario, right? Maybe not the exact same scenario, but something very similar. And if not, do you recognize that you are very resourceful in everything that you've overcome in your life up until this point, that you can be quite confident that you will know what to do at the time? And so that allows the mind to rest, knowing that actually I can put my trust in something. My trust is that I will know how to deal with it when that moment arrives that I have to deal with it. So quite often our thought traps are planning for something in the future, which obviously most likely never occurs. And number 3, be okay with bad feelings, with feeling bad. So one of the biggest things that we do is that we kind of resist the feelings of, I don't feel easy about this, there's something stressful potentially over the next week, or I've got a financial issue, or I've got a relationship issue, or something with my kids, or whatever it is. And that place of being in those emotions of anxiety and fear and worry, they don't feel good. And when we kind of resist them or go to war with those symptoms, and again, those symptoms are really just there to tell us, hey, we're overthinking, okay? That's not about what's actually going to happen now. That's not predicting how bad our situation's going to be. It's really a direct communication or a direct link to where your thinking is at. So that's what those symptoms are. It doesn't make sense to try to go to war with them, right? To resist them, to try to fix them, to get rid of them. Because all that does is it makes it persist. just to share an example, when I go traveling, or if I'm terrible in the heat, and I need to stop saying that I'm terrible in the heat, but I've not in the past been very good in the heat. And sometimes when I go traveling, like last year, I went to Europe and it was really hot, and I would find myself walking around saying, "Oh, it's so hot, it's so hot, it's so hot, it's so hot." And I don't know why I do it. I feel like there's a part of me that does it because I think somehow that's going to cool me down because I'm trying to accept it by saying it to myself so much. And all it does is it makes me hotter, right? To the point where I'm super sweaty and it's embarrassing. That situation for me is me trying to resist the heat that I was feeling, me trying to resist how hot my body was getting. And it was on my mind. And all I did was overheat my body. All I did was activate the stress hormones in the body to increase my body temperature, increase perspiration, and do the exact opposite of what I actually wanted. So when we resist our symptoms, they persist. And so if we can be okay with feeling bad, because you have to remind yourself, how many times have you felt bad and you have overcome them, right? And if you're listening to this, 100% of the time. Don't go to war with your feelings. They will pass as soon as your thinking settles. And from that place of clarity, you'll be able to really work through your challenges with a clear mind and really tap into your inner resources. So these are the 3 things that I focus on to really increase your understanding of how the mind works. Number 1, overthinking creates overwhelm. The symptoms that we experience are our bodies kind of tap on the shoulder, say, hey, you're in the red zone. There's too much going on in your mind. It's not about what's happening in your life. Number 2 is to escape the thought traps. Look at the thought traps that you have, that you catastrophize things, that the thoughts or the situations that you can't let go, right? And really see how in different scenarios, how you've handled yourself differently and how you can overcome this situation as well. And number 3, be okay with bad feelings. Okay, they pass, they've all passed, and you will be okay even with where you're at right now. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think and what really stood out for you, and maybe even what is the thought trap that you get stuck in. Let me know in the comments below.